This next topic is a bit of a complicated one. It's going to take some explaining. But could Lewis be regretting his move to Ferrari now that Mercedes have come good? And what will all of this do to poor Leclerc's dicky dicker? Now, for anyone who understood that reference, listen very carefully. I shall say this only once. It's a perfectly reasonable question. Right now, Ferrari's going through a torrid time of it, and all the while, their long-term lead driver has been struggling with a mixture of reliability issues, crashes with other drivers, and pit stop maladies. Oh my goodness, I've just realised something. This is exactly the same thing that Lando Norris is going through at the moment. Well, I mean, except the whole reliability situation, because, yeah, my boy, he's the only driver now to have actually finished every single lap of a Grand Prix this season. Oh, I've jinxed it, haven't I? In all seriousness, though, the downturn in Ferrari's fortune since Monaco has been a real shocker, whilst Mercedes have suddenly had an upturn in fortune and led many people to start speculating about what could happen to the Hamilton-Ferrari deal. Might it be torn up now that Lewis is getting better at the team he's currently at? Well, you see, it's not as simple as that. And yes, I know, I am well aware that a lot of us content creators were not all that long ago talking about the idea being that Ferrari might be regretting the deal with Lewis Hamilton, since he was not really finding his form. He was having the worst start of a season he had ever had, by his own admission. It was understandable to think that, because Lewis hadn't won a race in 2 years. The W15, this brand new concept, was proving not to be really good at all. It was struggling with cooling issues, it was having rear end stability problems, and of course, George was doing better in qualifying. It looked seriously that Lewis Hamilton was well and truly done for. And not to mention Aston Martin being a legitimate threat to them, as was all of those talks about conspiracies and sabotage in the mix. Oh, it was not a good time of it this start of the season. Now though, it's gone back the other way. Even if Lewis doesn't win another race after the British Grand Prix just done, that near 1,000-day drought is behind him. That demon has been exorcised, and the team he is at right now is determined to give him a proper send-off with a car that is coming back to him. Lewis Hamilton has got a car which is being upgraded constantly. So constantly, in fact, it's almost frightening. Every single race, there's a brand new upgrade which seems to work. This is almost like what was going on at McLaren last year, only more extreme. Do I think Lewis is ready to mount a championship campaign in 2025 or win several Grand Prix because of this? Well, it's too early to say that at the moment, but one thing is for sure. Lewis Hamilton is no longer down in the dumps. He's won a Grand Prix in the ground effect era, something that he probably thought would have never happened just 2 weeks ago. And he surprised himself with how emotional he got out of it. He's won 103 Grand Prix prior to this, but this one seems to be the most valued one in a long time, and that might really give him the strength in which to kick on. Yes, I know, you might be thinking, oh, you're really saying that because you're British, but come on. You have to look at what was being presented to us. This mattered to him. Now, naturally, considering that Mercedes has suddenly kicked on again and Lewis Hamilton's winning Grand Prix again after many months of not doing so, is there any means that Lewis Hamilton can possibly cancel the deal? And maybe Mercedes might decide to go, you know what, maybe let's talk about that option again, because remember, he is on that 1+1 deal, so 2025, you know, it's still on the table. Well, hold your horses there. Ironic, because we're talking about Ferrari. Maybe it's this whole moving to Ferrari in the first place that has rejuvenated Lewis Hamilton. I don't think it would be wise to maybe consider cancelling the Ferrari deal, because I think Lewis and Toto have accepted that Mercedes' part in Lewis's life that has been with him since he turned 13 is done. The quotes that both men have been delivering as of late have been, you know, retrospective, glowing, just like reflective, as in like, oh, we've had a good run, haven't we, Toto? Yes, of course, the manner in which the news broke out about Lewis going to Ferrari was bad and kind of awkward, and the way Toto processed it was really, really embarrassing, and not to mention, quite revealing, sending in loads of people to Brackley like a funeral march. It wasn't subtle, Toto, not at all. And of course, it was a lot earlier than Ferrari probably hoped. I think they would have loved to have broken the news at an Italian Grand Prix, be it the Emilia-Romagna one or at Monza. Ideally Monza, you know, Tifosi and whatnot. But either way, what has happened has happened. And with Mercedes winning 2 races in a row and seriously thinking that third in the Constructors is now plausible, the relationship can now end on a sweet note, instead of the bittersweet note that Lewis had been expecting before getting his first win since Jeddah 2021. And you know what, if he doesn't win a Grand Prix after this one, then I think this is a more special one than Jeddah, you know, Saudi Arabia, in the eyes of Lewis Hamilton. His last win is the British Grand Prix. He breaks the record of the most wins by a single driver at a single track. that's a pretty good one. And not to mention that Jeddah victory was amidst a really stressful championship battle. This one was a lot more wholesome, the Silverstone one. Besides, you really think Ferrari would keel over and let that happen? The amount of work they thrust in Lewis's direction to get him, and how much money the company has made and spent to get the 3-year deal over the line? But whatever happens now, it doesn't matter. He can now end his Mercedes career on a high note, or a higher note than had been expected, and then go over to Ferrari for the last 2-3 years of his career. It'll be a nice run out of it. He can have some fun. It's a lot less pressured. He now has a win in the ground effect era. All's good. This is another driver who can win a Grand Prix, thusly throwing in some jeopardy and speculation into the mix. It makes things a little bit more interesting for us fans, even if you don't like him. Lewis could win a Grand Prix, so now he's yet another person that can actually do the deed. And that's when we get to the loss of Charles Leclerc and what's going on with Ferrari. Can the spark that Lewis is manifesting right now carry over to the Scuderia? Give both the man and the machine hope? Well, you see, that too is complicated. Right now, Charles Leclerc is stuck in a rut. Again. And yes, of course, he got a massive spectre off of his back in Monaco that had been dogging him for a huge amount of time. Ever since he became a Ferrari driver, people were expecting him to win the Monaco Grand Prix. It was his best chance to do it. Okay, cool, he broke the Monaco curse, finally, but now what? At what cost did he pay to win this Grand Prix? Because since then, it's been an absolute stinker for the guy. The only person in the top 8 who scored less points than him is Checo. The contrast between Monte Carlo and Canada was stark, and it's only gotten worse since then. And like I mentioned earlier, you could liken his lot to Lando Norris. This year, both men have had a huge rod taken off of their backs. People have been expecting for Lando his first win. It's come now, but since then, he's not really kicked on as much as many people would have expected. Same goes for Charles. And it's only resulted in them either being scrutinised even further by the public, or their teammate is putting in results that are better than expected. Now, I'm not going to get into the McLaren side of things. I've already done that, and besides, you're probably sick and tired of hearing me talk about Oscar Piastri in a glowing way, gushing about the Australian. But the Carlos side of things is looking intriguing. Sure, the driver standings point to Charles being the better driver with 4 more points than the Spanish teammate, but it's not as simple as that. When you look at the mid-season averages, the picture is leaning toward Carlos more, especially since he participated in 1 less Grand Prix than Charles. Yes, of course, you could argue that Carlos and Charles, they're playing different games at the moment. Charles is playing the team game because he's with them for the long term, and Carlos is playing his own game considering he's not going to be at Maranello anymore after next year, and he's trying his best to make himself look good towards other teams. And even Charles is saying that, is that he's sensationalizing his drivers after their little spat at the Spanish Grand Prix. Come Monday morning and the end of the season, it is the results that matter the most. The only metric that Charles has over Carlos at the moment at the middle half of this year is the qualifying head-to-head and the number of points in the driver's standings. The rest are either tied or with Sainz having the advantage. It does give you a pretty interesting outline that things aren't going the way of Charles Leclerc. This was meant to be his team. Carlos, he's on the way out. Charles can now really assert himself as the leader of the team, ready for when Lewis Hamilton comes along, because right now, Carlos is the one getting the points. Okay, it's not many points, but it's some points. May I remind you of the average points chart that I showed you yesterday, where Ferrari were okay, but now they've fallen down hard. And I don't think it's going to get much better for the Scuderia at the moment until they can figure out the porpoising issues that have resurfaced, and Charles Leclerc can start making better tyre strategy calls when it gets to changeable conditions. You see, Ferrari have had a major slump in performance as of late, which stemmed from the admittedly rushed implementation of upgrades that were meant to have arrived at the British Grand Prix, but instead were fast-tracked to Spain. By the time we actually get to Silverstone, we find ourselves in a situation where Carlos is running a spec of car that was new at Imola, and Charles is now having to struggle with the brand new spec. They're trying to compare the two, see what works and what doesn't, and at the same time, it's giving poor Charles a bad back. I hope he's popping them painkillers after doing all of those comparison runs in FP2. According to Formula Data Analysis, the major test that Ferrari undertook showed that whilst the new car was faster in the corners, it was down on speed when you got to the straights, and that was down in part to the bouncing of the car, which took out the ground effect factor, and then back in, and then back out again. And the study concludes that they're probably going to be doing this all over again at the Hungaroring, considering that it's one of the most downforce heavy circuits on the calendar. If you do not have downforce, you are going to struggle. Now, of course, Fred Vasseur has been quick to defend Charles, asking the media to not make any rash conclusions regarding Leclerc's form, instead putting the onus on the team itself for making mistakes when it comes to the car, and the strategies, and that the limit of the SF24 has been reached, and that they need to go past the limit to get any meaningful pace out of it. Wait a minute, Fred, hold up there, hold up. This is the problem that Charles has been dealing with since 2022. Having to deal with a car that is on the limit, is extremely pointy, and is prone to error if you go past that limit. I thought we were past this, Fred. The 2024 car was meant to be the car that Charles had some more wiggle room with, and then thusly he could then push it to the limit on his terms and not have to exceed the limit and thusly make these mistakes, be entirely pressured, and then ultimately be outdone by his teammate. At the same time though, some responsibility is aimed squarely at Charles Leclerc. It's not just at the team. I appreciate Vasseur for taking some of the responsibility, in fact most of it, and trying to make the media leave Charles alone, but there are some moments where Charles is at fault. I mean, we all remember the whole Monaco situation where Ferrari bungled the pit stop. It gave away a possible win for Charles Leclerc a couple of years ago at Monaco. He would have been able to get rid of that spectre back then. So yes, on that occasion, it was the team's fault. Well, the Silverstone versions showed us that sometimes it's the driver that can make the wrong call. Charles did admit to going onto the intermediate tyre too early, having been presented the data by the team, which resulted in him falling down the order even more when it became obvious that he cooked said tyres as the track dried up, so he needed another stop. Again, he's kind of like Lando in a way, in that he really relies on the pit wall giving him the right information and the right calls at the right time, and he's just simply not getting that. And you then contrast it to his future teammate, who performed the pit strategies as well as Mercedes excellently. They timed it right, they timed it correctly, they did the undercut, which was just enough to keep Max Verstappen behind them, even though Lewis was on the inferior tyres at the time. That worked, whereas Ferrari, it didn't work. And it certainly didn't work in Canada, when Martin Brundle was even making digs and said that they were even more last. Oh my goodness. I can understand why Ferrari fans were upset between Monaco and Canada, because the whiplash, my goodness. Now, I'm not saying that Ferrari has reverted back to its old ways before Fred came along, but it's certainly apparent that the team have found themselves in a bit of a crisis regarding their aero package. And honestly, I'm kind of glad that Fred is there, because if he wasn't there, I think Ferrari would be in even more of a tailspin. At least he's there with a cool, calm head, and if the boss is cool, calm and collected and has a plan that might eventually work, that could save a lot of headaches at Ferrari. And it doesn't really help at the moment that there is a really big crisis going on with their technical director, the man who was in charge of devising the SF24, has now gone off to get into the bosom of Papa Stroll at Aston Martin. I really hope that they've got this Adrian Newey deal done and dusted and they're only waiting to announce it at the right time, because if they don't, they need to find somebody else quick and sharpish. But ultimately, Ferrari, in my opinion, got cocky after the Imola upgrades worked better than expected, and they became the victims of the brewing development war. They rushed their next package, and it's led to them walking these parts back, wasting months of research and manufacturing. Yes, I understand. The car fundamentally is a good one. It's faster in the corners, that's great. But it has now succumbed to the porpoising issue that Ferrari were having to deal with the most when it arrived in 2022. And it's got nothing to do with the hardware on display. Many people in the comments were telling me this, that Haas used the wind tunnel, the same one, at Maranello, and they don't have this issue. In fact, they're flying at the moment. Nico Hülkenberg being given a car that can really show off his talents, and I'm glad, I'm really happy for Nico. But something's gone wrong with how the data that they've got has been interpreted. But not so wrong that it's made a slower car, no. Well, okay, if the car does have potential, it can be faster and the wind tunnel works okay, how are they going to fix this? Well, in the words of 2018 Alonso, I don't know. But what I do know is that when Charles Leclerc meets Lewis Hamilton as a teammate for the first time, and throughout 2025, things might be starting to get a little bit worse before they get better. And I really hope Charles is prepared for this. Do I reckon that Charles and Lewis will come to blows on the track? Well, maybe, it's too early to say right now, but off track? No, probably not. It's quite publicly obvious that this year has been a learning exercise for Charles and Lewis. They've been seen together talking much more than in previous years. They're trying to get to know one another before the pressures of being teammates really becomes apparent, and that's great. That is great for Charles and Lewis to be doing that, to understand one another as people. That's fantastic, and I'm glad. Off the track, they'll probably be good chums, all be well there. They're trying. And yes, of course, Charles will no longer be the default leader of the team, that mess becoming all the more muddy, but Lewis has confessed that the change to moving to Italy and learning the culture of Ferrari and the language will be tricky and different, considering, well, he's only ever driven for a British-based team. Yes, I know Mercedes is German, but they are based in Brackley. There is a difference there, and this might actually work out in Charles's favour. He might have time to really establish to Lewis that, hey, I have more established roots than you do, and this is how things are going to work. But you know what? This actually gives me some hope. There's maybe some optimism here. Charles Leclerc no longer being the main focus of Ferrari. Maybe he wasn't supposed to be the main focus of Ferrari. Maybe he was given that mantle far too early. Think about it. The Scuderia put too much pressure on the kid when he was so young. When the team signed him on for 5 years in 2019, that was unprecedented. No other Ferrari driver had been given that long a contract before, not even Michael Schumacher. Right in the middle of 2 domination patches of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Ferrari, Leclerc, they had to go through a lot of struggles to try and get anywhere close to them. So it was an uphill battle for Charles to try and get anywhere near these 2 drivers. So that doesn't help already. And then, of course, it's Ferrari. Charles has not been able to fully implement what issues he has regarding luck, reliability, and pushing too hard, because Ferrari puts so much on his shoulders. And if the SF24 has become a car that can only work at the limit again, then no wonder Charles will struggle. And to top it all off, I think there are 3 other factors that could be against Charles Leclerc in his potential 3-year tenure until 2027, when maybe his exit clause that he established with his own contract extension could be activated. First, the fact that Lewis is now fired up after years of reality checks. Charles isn't getting a downbeat Hamilton anymore. Lewis could start winning races again, or at least be competitive and get consistent podiums, and then of course try and emulate Michael Schumacher like Vettel, like Alonso did, in trying to get a championship with Ferrari. I'm not saying this is a guarantee. I'm not saying that Lewis is definitely going to be winning races at Ferrari right from the get-go. It's going to take some time for him to get settled in. But it is one of those sirens of Formula One. Any driver wants to race for Ferrari. Any person wants to work for Ferrari. It's just one of those things. Lewis could inspire a team in a way that Charles just simply can't right now. He's a multiple world champion at Maranello once more. They've now got one again. Granted, I think that Lewis is mature enough now to try and not destabilise Charles, at least deliberately, even though Charles has said that right now, Lewis being there, it's a great motivator. How long will that last though? I really do hope for the best for Charles, I really do. Maybe him not being the main focus anymore at Ferrari might lead to the best version of Leclerc that we'll ever get. Second, there is the reality of the errors that keep cropping up with himself and the team, and it will probably affect Lewis as well, and he too will get frustrated. But when you compare what Charles is going through to what Carlos is going through, it's just not fair at this point. And I don't think this is going to miraculously disappear. We thought that it had disappeared this year, but no, the same problems that Ferrari has been dealing with in recent years are still there. It might dissipate more in 2025, towards them becoming a super team come 2026, but it's still going to be some growing pains. And then thirdly, and this could be the biggest factor here, that could really demoralise and destabilise Charles, the incoming fans. It's my belief that Toto Wolff will be glad to see the back of Team LH, so bad that it's got to the point where it's had to call the police on them regarding the allegations of the team compromising Lewis's car to make George look good. Now okay, I know that Lewis had a really bad time of it at the beginning of the season, but why would Mercedes compromise their own car to get back at Lewis to demoralise him even more so he's even less effective in races? No. That doesn't make any sense. Mercedes would try and not want to be lower in score than Aston Martin. Thankfully, they're not anymore. Lewis has found his groove again. George has got his groove. He might be a good team leader in the future. It's all looking better for Mercedes than it was just like a month or two ago. They want both drivers firing on all cylinders, and even if Toto is sad or angry to see Lewis go, he'd want Hamilton to leave on a good note. And besides, if Wolff wants Max at that team for 2026, sabotaging one of their own cars when he's not happy with that driver, it's not a good opening gambit in terms of negotiations. With Lewis going to Ferrari, his fans will follow because, well, they're following because it's Lewis Hamilton, not necessarily because he's at Mercedes. And Fred will have to cater to them and understand them and comprehend the idea that if things aren't going well with Lewis, but they're going well for Charles, there will be accusations of sabotage, that they're only using Lewis for his money and his popularity or something like that. It's gonna happen, of course it will. And then of course you'll get the blowback from Charles Leclerc fans thinking that Lewis is treading on their boy's toes and that, oh, he shouldn't be there. It's just gonna develop into another flame war on Twitter, isn't it? There are going to be arguments, there are going to be debates if team orders are enacted that will favour one driver over the other. It happens all the time. We're seeing this now between Verstappen fans and Norris fans. And oh, Bernie Collins, help me if they make contact with one another on the track, because that's just going to lead to an absolute firestorm. And Charles and Fred, they really need to understand that this is a reality, and I hope that they can handle this well, because right now, Charles is not handling it before the fans of Lewis have come along. Can you imagine how hard it will be for Leclerc to deal with all this, that he's being pummeled potentially by Lewis Hamilton's fans? And I really hope that Lewis is aware of this and is able to try and assure people that nothing bad is going on, that Leclerc is on the level and all is good. I think he really needs to understand that this is a huge beast that he needs to control, and that certain realities will remain the same, and that right now, we saw at the British Grand Prix, Verstappen with Hamilton, it was a class act. them just giving congratulatory thumbs up and waves at the end of the race. It was a good race. All is good between the pair of them. They don't want to bring up 2021 anymore. Lewis isn't going to be drawn into comparisons of 2021 anymore. They've put that under the bridge now, thanks to hindsight, of course, and time healing all wounds, but there's no bad blood between them anymore. But regardless, Verstappen and Hamilton fans will still be at odds with each other for years to come, and Leclerc had better be ready to deal with it in some shape or form. All the while, Carlos is just picking up the pieces, giving Ferrari some hope, and probably a middle finger as he chooses where he's going to go next. Since he's talking to practically every team on the grid at the moment, maybe he might want to go and talk to Haas because of the whole Toyota situation. And you can find out about what's going on with that deal there in this video that you can go and watch next. And so far, neither team or entity have denied the rumours, and Toyota's been really quiet.